Hello again! In previous videos, we saw how you can create your first Kedro project from scratch, and later on we started developing a little bit some more advanced features of Kedro that you can use to create your data pipelines. In this new part, we're going to see how you can deploy your Kedro project to production using different techniques, including converting it to a Docker image, deploying it as a Python package, and also deploying it to an Airflow instance. But first of all, we have to see the concept of environments and make some adjustments to our project. So let's go step by step. First of all, here I have the documentation about configuration environments. So let's start by saying what these environments mean. We've been using environments all along when we were running our Kedro pipelines. In fact, all our configuration was living in a directory called conf/base that contains all the basic configuration files, and there was another one called conf/local that contains some local configurations that we do not intend to commit to version control, for example. These might be useful for things like credentials, special variables that we want to use locally, and things like that. By default, Kedro assumes that you're going to use a base environment and a local environment, and your default run environment is going to be the local one. So let's see how we can create our own custom environments so that we can leverage that in the next videos. I'm going back to my editor, and if you remember, I have my catalog.yaml that contains the definition of my datasets, and as you can see, it lives under conf/base. If I expand the conf directory, you see there are these two subdirectories that I was mentioning before, with the base containing all the basic configuration files, and then local containing a basic credentials file that is unused for now. But I'm going to ignore these environments for now and create my own one. So first of all, let's see what happens if I run my data processing pipeline as a recap. So I'm going to do Kedro run pipeline data processing. And then if you remember, this is going to load the shuttles, reviews, and companies datasets, and it's going to apply several pre-processing nodes to them and produce the input for the model. So I'm seeing that on the logs again, and now the execution has completed. Now, as I was mentioning, by default, this is using the local and base environments. So I'm going to create now a custom environment so that I can see what happens. For that, I'm going to create another subdirectory inside conf that I'm going to call test. And then I'm going to create a catalog file inside test. So catalog.yml. And I'm going to override one of the dataset definitions from my base catalog and change the file path. So let me open my base catalog here, and I'm going to override the companies, which is the first. So let me paste that to conf test catalog, and then I'm going to use here a directory that doesn't exist. So 00_test, for example. So here are my two catalogs side to side. Now, what happens if I try to run the pipeline again? Well, I can do Kedro run pipeline data processing, and you will see that absolutely nothing changes. And the reason for that is that even if I created a new environment called test, this is not being used because the default is to use base and local. So now, if I want to actually use that, I need to do Kedro run pipeline data processing, and then I can specify --env equals test. What do we expect to see here? Well, what Kedro is going to do is consolidating the configurations of all my environments, and since there is a company's definition in two catalogs, the one of the test environment is going to take precedence. And since this file path doesn't exist yet, I expect to see some sort of error. So let's see. Now I do Kedro run with the environment set to test, and as expected, I'm seeing an error right here. So it's complaining that there's no such file as spaceflights data 00 test. Just for completeness, let's create that. So I'm going to my data directory, create a new 0 test, and I'm going to copy the data that was in 0 row, so companies, to 00 test. And then if I repeat Kedro run pipeline data processing with the test environment, now I should see that everything is going to work just fine. Now, the interesting thing is that, yes, there was a duplicate definition of the company's dataset, but the other ones were already available in the base environment. So everything was running just normally. The key thing here is that Kedro is merging these two environments to produce a single consolidated configuration. All right, so this is the concept of environments. And what we're going to do in the next videos is we're going to create a so-called production environment, and we're going to change the locations of our data so that we do not rely on the local file paths on disk anymore. But more on that in the next video.